Welcome back to another episode of The Anxious Creative. If you're tuning in on YouTube, you can see my lovely solidarity roots for all the clients out there that have not been able to get into the salon during this pandemic. Anyway, I'm here to share with you this week's exciting episode where I have a special guest, my friend Katelyn Collins. If you don't know who she is yet, you are going to be in love with her at the end of this episode. She is a conversion copywriter. So if you've ever sat blankly in front of your computer or in front of your phone, not knowing what to write to your clients, either in an email or in a social media or Instagram post, this episode is going to help you with that. So I can't wait. Get ready. Let's dive in with Katelyn on this week's episode of The Anxious Creative. I overthink, I overshare, and I overanalyze. So come explore with me as I chat about business, life, and relationships, all through the lens of an anxious creative. All right, I am here with Katelyn Collins, conversion copywriter extraordinaire. Katelyn, for those who are new to the copywriting world, what is a copywriter and what is a conversion copywriter?
Good question. So a copywriter is someone who writes just like any of the things. So like any words that you see in a business, whether it's on a pamphlet, whether it's on a sign, whether it's an email, like all of that is considered copy. So a copywriter is someone who writes words. A conversion copywriter is someone, and this was coined like not even super long ago by Joanna Wiebe, is someone who uses voice of customer data, information, and persuasion techniques and certain formulas to move their audience to yes. So this is kind of like more applicable in like sales copy, like emails that are trying to sell stuff, or even websites, like website copy, where on this one like web page, you want, like at the end of the day, you want someone to maybe click the button at the bottom or navigate the website in a certain way. So a conversion copywriter is really just like thinking about all the psychology behind that, really looking into like decision making and stuff like that, and tactics and strategies, and taking everything they write off of information, or what we call voice of customer data, which is basically just what your customers are saying.
That's so cool. And so how did you get into this world?
Let's see. So, I mean, writing has always kind of been a thing for me. It was something, luckily, I was naturally pretty good at it. Like when I was very little, my mom says like my journals, one entry would be like 10, 12 pages long. And then my brother, like who is older than I am, like his teachers would be like, we need to get him writing more in his journal, because he'd write like one line, and like that's kind of it. So it was always like, I think writing is just like my favorite communication tool. Like even to this day, like I will, trip over my words, but I will write like my thoughts out so much more easily. So it was kind of a thing. And like, I was always like more of like a creative person. I went to school for theater, so there was like playwriting and stuff in there that was definitely of interest to me. And then as I like grew up and became an adult in the adult world for the last like 10
an adult.
It's like I don't quite know if it hit. I'm like, I hear it hit. I'm like over 30, but like I can't quite confirm, because like nothing feels like it.
No, that's like you and I were talking the other day in our DMs about like being on TikTok and being over 30 and like, can we not?
We so can. And I will be your number one fan, and I will like religiously watch anything you put out, Dawn.
Yeah, we'll try it. I'll try it.
We should try it. I'm gonna make it a new thing.
We'll do like the side by side ones, and we'll like whatever. For those of you that are watching this on YouTube, you saw me try and do the whatever dance thing. For the like someone else, no, I don't know what it is. Anyway,
I love it.
Off topic.
I love it. But yeah, so just always a knack for writing, like turned into, in adulthood, like started having real jobs. Like first I was a front desk receptionist at a gym, and they like quickly learned like, oh, if we need, a PDF written or like something like worded better, like give it to Katelyn. So that turned into me being promoted into a marketing position. So then I'm like writing newsletters, emails. Also at the time, like I'm a multi-passionate person. So I was pursuing acting.
Cool.
And I was also like trying to promote myself as an actor, staying in touch with, anyone who was following me. I had very few followers, but I was writing like weekly emails to them. And I found, like, funny enough, like that was kind of like the most fun to me, like writing the emails. So I was always just like, and then taking other gigs, like as like a blog writer here and there, just kind of loving like any sort of writing bit. And then in 2016, I took a full-time position as the in-house copywriter and head of communications at a company called Daybreaker. It was a startup. We were an early morning sober dance party. So we would get up at 6 a.m. at like epic places and
Cool.
It was fun. It was wild. And so there was so much, writing that had to be done on a day-to-day basis there, which was cool because I think one of the things I took from that world or from that experience was like, I am capable like of hard things, or like sitting down in front of something where I would be like, oh my gosh, like my workload is just huge. Like there is no way. But I always came out at the other side. Like maybe some things like weren't done, but it's like, especially if there was, one piece of copy that was hard, I got into this place where I was like, you know what? Like I've already showed myself so many times. I've sat here being like, I have nothing to write. What am I going to write? This is going to be hard. But I always like came out the other side and wrote something. So lots of good lessons and stories from that 2.5 years as an in-house copywriter there. Long story short, I am someone who, can get overwhelmed for sure. Like you tell me your audience like can resonate with this. Like I am probably one of your perfect audience members as well. It was just such a, a startup can be so stressful, and it was just long hours in the office. Just continuous overwhelm that I had to learn to deal and adapt with, which also, again, like another playground for epic, like life lessons. But I needed to get out, like in order to like, move on and live like a very healthy life. And not to say there was anything wrong with that company. Like that was a team of amazing people doing amazing things with giant hearts. Like I believe in Daybreaker. I love them. I want them to live forever and ever and ever. It's the most amazing thing ever. But for me, it's just like, okay, that job was a staple part of my life, but it was now time to move on into something else. So I was kind of already playing around with some freelance writing gigs, writing Facebook ads for online courses, like through a very small agency. And it just kind of grew from there. And then finally, when I got brave enough to first, I half quit Daybreaker. I kind of was like, I'm like done, but I'll stick around till you find someone. So I was like sticking around, like actually working for them remotely at that point. And sticking around for like 6 months. And then after 6 months, they're like, we found someone. And I'm like, oh crap. All right.
Here we go.
Yeah. Here we go. It's like, if your butt is put to fire, like you can make stuff happen. And so then, that was the day it went full time. And honestly, I've been lucky that it's been like that ever since. So
I think that's such an important part for people to hear, not just about you being a copywriter, but how taking the leap into being your own boss is, it's rarely does everything align perfectly. Like I see so many people that are like, okay, I'm going to do it. And I know I can, and I know I will, but I'm going to wait for X, Y, Z to happen. And then they wait and they wait and they wait, not realizing that you have to jump and then figure out how to land.
Yeah. And you always will. Like you always will. And it's like at the same time, it's like, I do think there's like a little niggle in your gut maybe that like says, I know this is scary. Yeah, that's that's a word.
Like, I love it. Sorry.
It's like, oh good, I'm going to use it a bunch. So now you know. It's like it's just that little like gut rumbling, that little like hit of intuition, or like I don't know, it's like, I don't know, maybe something that says like, maybe this will be okay. Like maybe I can like take this leap and go do it. But like, even if it doesn't work out as planned, like I do know it's like, if you have to leap, the net will totally appear and catch you. That has been my experience 100% of the time.
I always say like my brain goes into, before I do something, I like spiderweb into like all the possible what ifs. So like if this happens, then this could happen, but this could happen, this could happen, but then this could happen. And it's like this weird like spider web. And then because I'm a big person on analogy, anyone who's listened to this podcast knows I've like talked about analogies, but talking about like jumping and figuring out how to land. When I went skydiving for the first time, it was like tandem, but there was someone on me and it was, have you skydived before?
No. And I used to be like, I totally will do that. And now I've gotten to the point where I'm like, I've made it this far. No way am I going to do that.
It was so fun. I took my dad for his birthday, which like my mom's like, thank God you land, because life insurance would not have covered that. But anyway, you like go out, they like count to 3 and you go out and then you're like free falling. And I call it like, it was euphoric. It was so loud. It was quiet. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, we have to land. And like, they kind of teach you how to do it. So like the tandem person's going to land and you're supposed to put your feet up. And so I was like, oh, this will be like smooth sailing. We know what to expect, but we totally like crashed and like slid on our bums, and realizing like, as you were saying, like, as I said, we were talking about like jump and then figure out how to land. It's like, even if you think you have it figured out, it could go a different way. And at the end of the day, like I landed and it was fine. And it wasn't as graceful as I hoped it would be. And we have it on video, but I landed and I got up. And so knowing that you like you might like sprain, like figuratively sprain your ankle, or you might crash a little bit, but you'll get up.
Yes. Oh, congratulations on doing that. I've always thought you were cool, and now you just ranked higher again.
I want to go again. That was like 10 years ago that I went skydiving.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. No, that's so epic that you did it. I'm not surprised. That's cool. And I love what you said about the spider web, because I know for myself, I used to create these spider webs, and I don't know if maybe your spider webs looked the same, but they were all the possible negative outcomes. And so the first thing I started noticing was like, after whatever situation was over, I'd look back at my original spider web and none of those outcomes actually happened. And then I'd be up to like a new situation, make a new spider web of negative outcomes, get through it and look back and notice, again, none of those negative things like happened. So I eventually like was able to kind of like coach myself out of that and just be like, okay, if I've shown myself so many times, like all those negative outcomes didn't actually happen, then I'm going to let that be proof that maybe this time where I'm like creating a new negative spider web, it like doesn't, it's probably none of that stuff's probably going to happen. And on top of it, like, what is the likelihood that I called it? Like, so to the T, like, what's the likelihood, Katelyn? So yeah,
I just
it's
like
crazy.
came up with a brilliant add-on to my spiderweb analogy. Oh my gosh, I'm such a weirdo when it comes to analogies. Like, what's a spiderweb created for? It's created to trap insects for the spider to eat them, right? Is that what they do? And basically,
Yes.
when we create our own spiderweb, we like crawl into our own trap of complacency and comfort. And it's our own little like safety net of keeping us from doing anything else. So like, just don't create the spider web and you won't get trapped.
That's so
Does that work?
good. Yes, that absolutely works.
Okay, I think I'm
Yes.
brilliant.
You are. You are.
So speaking of spider webs, because I know this used to be a big thing for me, and I know it's a lot for a lot of creative service-based individuals, is they love writing. They love it so much. They love expressing themselves, but they're terrible at grammar. And they're terrible, like they sit and they reread it and they question whether or not it makes sense. And so I know, like, I joke about like spelling mistakes being part of my brand because I'm a terrible proofreader. Not so much speller, but proofreader, but I'm also terrible at grammar. And so what would you say to someone who feels like they love writing, and they're more of like an auditory person, but they do like getting their thoughts out on paper, but they just get really self-conscious or insecure about whether or not the grammar comes out right, or their voice isn't translating? I know it's getting a long question, but like they go from like being like super fun person when you talk to them to this really like stiff, like perfectly grammared person. What are your thoughts on that?
Good question. And first of all, I love that you make it part of your brand. I've actually like even recently, because I'm like, I don't have time to like proofread through my weekly emails, I was considering having like a PPS. Like, I do not proofread because who's got time for that? Like, so excuse all typos.
Right?
So I feel like that is like the first bit of advice is like, just exactly what you did there. And like, exactly like my thought there, like if there's any way to like break out of the box and work with it, that's amazing. But the second thing is like, know that you're off the hook, because these days in copywriting, especially like for anything online, like, which is the emails, like everything that we're doing, where it's more like copy talking, not copywriting. So like like grammar at its finest, you are allowed to throw it out the window. And if you start sentences with but, naturally, like when you talk, start sentences with but. If you want to write in fragmented sentences, like if we remember prepositional phrases, like who remembers those? Like who cares? You don't have to. It's like there was a song like about, above, across, after, against, among, around, all those I learned in 7th grade. So all those are like prepositions, but it doesn't even matter. I don't even need to sing the rest of the song because like proper grammar, we don't have to worry about. So there you're off the hook. Like that being said, I'm sure, like, of course you don't want to make like giant spelling errors or whatever, like maybe you want your bases covered. So it's like, you know, use like the spell check and stuff to the best of your ability. But you know that it's like, allow the stuff as best as you can to come out as though you are talking it out. So maybe if it's helpful, even like record it into an app, like for audio, and just like hear how you talk regularly. And then that is like the start of what you write. Maybe you finesse it a little bit here and there after, but take the pressure off as much as you can. And same thing like for, you know, if something's translating and you're a super fun, cool person, and then, you know, you write something super stiff and formal. I think a lot of people make the mistake of thinking formal is professional. Where those are just, like we're always like, no matter what business you have, like whether you're speaking to like your clientele as a hairstylist or like even like lawyers out there speaking to other lawyers, like at the end of the day, everyone is a human. And it is becoming like even more and more normal and common for like all of our copy and our writing out there to really just be, and thank goodness, like human to human. So I would just like take the pressure off as much as possible. Try to have it think of like copy talking as much as possible. Copy talking, I like that. And because I didn't originate that. I totally heard. I think there's a number of like copywriters saying that, and I'm like, yeah, that's good. We got to like keep that going.
Yeah. Especially because I know so many of you guys that are listening in right now use social media, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But also, I feel like Katelyn would probably agree with me that social media is a great tool, but you really need to be connecting with them in their emails and in their inboxes as well. But I know so many of you guys are 100% on social media and get like that, like, what do I say? What do I write in a caption? Do I just only tell them like about what product specials I have? Or what do I do during like this time where I can't even see my clients right now? And if you're having like a mental block of like what to write for a caption, I know Katelyn, you said you have a little thing that you want to share.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to do, whether it's emails or Instagram captions, I call it moment telling. So people kind of think, so there's like this whole idea of like adding value when you're writing maybe like Instagram captions, and they might tell you like, you need to add value for your audience. And add value is like, show your expertise, like talk about this product that they want to hear, or like something that positions you as an authority, or like something that educates them, is informational. Sometimes that feels like a lot of pressure, or like sometimes it's just like a little less fun, or maybe like you kind of dry up of like those sorts of ways of adding value. So I think one thing that we forget and is so fun to remember is like adding value is also just getting your audience to hang out with you for a little bit and engage them in some way. And that's why a lot of copywriters will talk about, that's why story is so important in copy and in writing copy that engages people, is because our brains love stories. We're like wired for it. It's why as little kids, we love story time when we're like 3 years old, snuggled up with mom. And as an adult, we like gossip. Like if you think someone's about to be like, guess what Dawn did yesterday? Like, I'm going to lean in as like, no matter how nice I am, like, I'm like, what?
Like, tell me what you did. You laid on the couch all day.
I love that. That sounds like my Saturday. But I'm going to lean in, and it's like, notice yourself. Like if it just like anywhere in your daily life, if it feels like, whether it's a YouTube video that you're listening to or a person that you're listening to, if it feels like they're about to go into a story, there's like something in you that like lights up. That's kind of like, what I want to hear. And so you like starting in stories, again, stories might also feel like too big, overwhelming. Like, oh, does this have to be the story of how I became a hairstylist? Does this have to be the big story of some big turning moment? Like, no. So that's where I started coming up with this idea of like moment telling, which is just taking even just any sort of moment in your day or a past memory growing up and kicking off your Instagram caption or email by like talking about that moment. So I even have an Instagram caption talking about how I remember when I was 5 years old in gymnastics class, learning how to do push-ups and just kind of how ridiculous I looked. So I used that moment as the subject of my caption. And that's not copywriting or anything like that. Like, yes, I was able to, in the last few lines at the end of like the caption, I was able to kind of turn it around into, you know, either something that felt sort of life lesson-y, like without being super life lesson and inspirational. We don't have to be everyone's guru. Like, oh my gosh, I love to just do and sometimes I can like, you know, turn it back into, you know, some sort of small analogy or a metaphor. But like I start there, and because one, that's going to actually be so effective in engaging people. It's going to help your content stand out from the crowd. And it also gives you access to literally millions of ideas. Like I could even just like remember a moment from today when I was struggling with a straw wrapper or something like, oh, I shouldn't say that. Like I know that's not big in Canada, or really it shouldn't be nowhere. I use those.
Shame. No, I'm just kidding.
No,
Is it just a Canadian thing that we don't use straws?
It is definitely a bigger deal in Canada. Like I went to Starbucks in Canada and I was straw shamed. Yeah. But you know what? I was like, you're right. Like, good for you. Like, normally I am like this. Like, I'm very like, you know, like very hip that way. Like I recycle. I try not to like use things. Like, I don't think we should have a ton of plastic, but I like had just arrived to Canada and I like asked for a straw, like, cause I was confused and it was new. And I was like, oh, can I have a straw? And there was like death stare.
That was like, kind of unrelated but related. Before, like when COVID was just starting up here in Canada, my parents were visiting, and I think it was the like March 17th weekend. So it was like a thing, but like people hadn't, it was like the day before people didn't, like it was announced, don't go to work or whatever. And we went to IKEA and it was pretty quiet. And this lady was like, we're all like stared and looked at her like, what? You're coughing. What is this thing? I feel like that must have been what it was like. Everyone's like, ooh, she asked for a straw.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I think it was like the beginning of like an upheaval for like that whole Starbucks staff. And I felt like myself getting so judged.
Yeah. And you're like, you're spending $5 on a coffee. Don't judge me.
I know. I know.
Going back to the moments thing, I had, well, you were saying how like, you're like, you don't have to be everyone's guru. Literally, I wrote an email 2 weeks ago talking about how Nick hit me in the boob in the middle of the night while he was asleep.
I read that. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. And then I was like, and then I said, normally I try to like tie this into like some sort of life lesson, but I was like, today it's just for your pure entertainment. Cause I was like, I don't think I can turn it into like watch out for flailing arms, but how like people, like when I flip through my IG or when I open up an email, like I can go buy one real quick if it's boring. And it's not usually about, like, I even think about watching your Instagram stories, like you'll be dancing, like rarely are you talking about copywriting and what you do for a living. It's like you're building that relationship.
Yeah. And it's like, that's what I think is like, we kind of forget, like, and I love that you also didn't tie that email into anything else, because I think there's pressure to tie it into anything else. And when it's forced and you're reading an email that's forced tying back into your business, it's like, oh, here it comes. Yeah. And I hate that. So I think, yeah, like it's like, and I say this in, I have a freebie, it's called the Copywriting Starter Kit. And one of my things where I talk about like, you know, the storytelling, moment telling, I'm like, and if you can't tie it back in, don't.
Oh.
If it feels hard, don't. Like the important thing is that like your audience is hanging out with you and they're engaged by you and you're sharing like slices of yourself with them because they buy from you before they buy like from like your brand or like your thing. Like I know that I'm not the first, like everyone says that and it's so true. And so just having that valuable hangout time with your audience is just as important. For me personally, I'm like, it's more important. And for me personally, it's more fun. So I choose to have like the more fun marketing more often than maybe someone else.
And I want to say to like all the hairstylists that are listening in, or creative service-based professionals, like think about it. Like your clients come to you like for a haircut, but so much more than that. Like they come to you for that conversation. So right now, while you can't be with them, like think of the ways, like think of one, like if you're stuck on what to write in a caption or in an email, think about like one of those clients in your chair and what you would say to them, and then write that as a caption. Would you say?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What about for the people who I know there's someone out there right now that they're like, but Katelyn and Dawn, like I'm not funny. And I feel like I have to be funny, or I have to be goofy, or I have to be entertaining. What's the flip side for someone who doesn't feel, they're like, that's just not me. How do I captivate people's attention? How do I tell them stories when I'm not funny or goofy or like that person online?
Yeah, good question. And my first response to that is like, good on you for not feeling like you have to be funny, because I think I've gotten questions before that's like, how do I be funny in my email? And I'm like, well, if you're asking that, then like, that's not your natural tone, your natural. Wait, say that again.
You have to be like, girl, you ain't funny. No, that's
girl, you ain't funny. It's like, you know what? I'm funny, but I was not pretty growing up. So we're even. I was awkward. Oh God.
Oh, I'm still awkward.
And that's why we're such good friends.
Yeah. Actually, Kate, aside, can I go on a little slight tangent? So
please.
Caitlin did some copywriting for me, and I thought it was so fun because I was filling out a questionnaire and I was like, hey, I'm just going to do this in audio because I didn't want to have to type it all out. And then your response back was like, oh, this actually helped like me hear who you are. And when you wrote that copy for me, I was like, dang, I feel like I wrote this, but like, it's way better. It was like, it was creepy how well you got creepy in like the best way of how well it sounded like me, and how like you hearing how me talk. Exactly like that.
Me talk pretty.
Yeah. Anyway, going back to the people who think they're not funny enough, or they have to be funny, or how do I be funny to get people, continue your comment that I rudely interrupted.
No, I love it. You know what you're so good at is like remembering where we were at and like tying it back in, which is not a quality I possess. So, all right. So if you're not funny, like embrace that fully, like whatever you are, just as much as you can, like allow that to be what your copy is. If you are sarcastic, let that come out a little bit. And if you are kind of anal, let that come out a little bit. And then at the same time, like, because I do know, like everyone always is like, but it's really actually hard to write the way I actually speak, because it really is hard. And I'll be the first one to say it, which is also why I don't tell people that one of the things I can help with is helping you write like you sound. Because I do think that is really hard, and it's actually hard to articulate or figure out like how that is like, and I actually on top of it don't know that you will ever write like you sound. I think there will always like be something different about it, and also letting that be okay. Like even mine, like I do like to think that like my copy is very much infused with my personality, like, and I do get that feedback from people, but it's not exactly like I sound, and it'll never fully be like Katelyn standing here in the flesh. So allow yourself some grace, let it not be exactly like you sound, but just like do your darndest in the meantime to just let whatever you want come out, and read it back to yourself. Like if it doesn't sound like a human that you know, and
read it out loud.
Yeah, read it out loud. Like, yeah, if you can't just kind of like, you know, do that and have it sound, you know, sort of semi like yourself, then, you know, find those things that you're like, would I really say that? And maybe say something else.
Because it's really easy. I remember when I first started like doing more writing, I would just mimic someone else's voice that I admired. And it's so easy to bring that on. But then all of a sudden people who know you are like, that's not you. Wait, what? And it took a lot of practice. Like, what would you say? So you've got your Copywriter Starter Kit, where can people find that?
So it's right now most readily available in my Instagram bio link.
Okay.
So I am Katelyn Collins, KATELYNCOLLINS. I am Katelyn Collins on Instagram. Right in my bio is the only thing you can get is like that copywriting starter kit.
Perfect. So we'll link that in there. You guys should all go get it, because I think like one, practice is important, right? Not giving up, but then also having the guidance of someone who can help. Like what are some of the things they can expect to see inside of the starter kit?
So I kind of say like, it's great if you're, so, and I know not everyone listening to this like cares about having like a weekly newsletter, but for ones, but they should. Yeah, there's like,
are listening and have been in any of my, if you've been in my Rock Your Business program, you know how I talk about like social media is great. And I'm not saying you shouldn't use it, but you need to pair it with something. Like your inbox doesn't have an algorithm. Social media does.
Yeah. And everyone is on email. And like, if you make them fun, well, maybe not fun. I don't want to say that because that puts pressure and that's but an expectation.
You have to be fun though. Sorry, that was awful. No.
But like, no, I totally get it. Yeah, so like if this makes that sound daunting or hard, or it's just something you procrastinate, the copywriting starter kit helps to fix that. It just gets you freaking writing no matter what. My intention with people is to just get rid of the expectations, set the barriers super low. And like, if you even need to send out crap. Like that's where it starts. Like do that. Don't worry. Just like get consistent with it. Get something out every day. Like it really does serve. There's no service-based business out there. There's no business out there that can't have some amazing benefits like from email. Like it can turn into, it opens your world into so much more. Like even right now, if you were like a brick and mortar, like you could have, that's just like such a huge conversation right now, but it's like, it just, whether it's a situation like this or whether it's another situation where you're like, I want to have another stream of income, like that isn't tons of like super heavy lifting. Like you can create a digital product, but you got to have an email list to send it to. So even if you, and if you've got one that you're like, I just was told this would be a good idea, and you've had it for a year, and now it's like, voila, I've got an audience to sell to.
Absolutely. And like, I started, so probably 2 years ago when I was in the salon full time, I started sending out a monthly newsletter just with a little update of what was going on and a special on a product or a service. And it increased my retail revenue by, I don't even know how much. Like I sold like $500 more a month in retail, plus increased my bookings. So for those of you that have, like, I know right now we can't, like some of you guys are opening up salons and stuff, but if you want, people forget to make a hair appointment, or people forget that they need to get their nails done, or whatever service it is, they're thinking about it, but they're not taking action on it. And then you just popping in and reminding them is such a good way. Like it's not just about building, it's about building a relationship too, but it actually can make them take action, being like, oh yeah, I've been meaning to do that. Or, oh yeah, I needed that product. And how much like it changed my business when I was not doing online business, but when I was in the salon. And I just wrote like a 20-minute email. It didn't take me long.
Yeah. And even in that actually is, that's like the perfect, the top of mind thing is also so huge. That literally happened to me the other day. Like I have a gym who now, they've got this like virtual sort of mini membership going on, and I haven't renewed in like for the past 3 weeks. And I'm like, oh, I will. Like when I feel like working out, I'm going to like renew. I'm going to get myself back in that habit. And then they like just sent out this email, like with a cool, like a fun video too, like from the owner who I love. And I was just like, oh yeah, you know what? Okay. Like it did remind me. And right there and then I bought a recurring, I mean, it's like for 15 days is like one membership. So I did a recurring for 3 times. So what is 15? 3 times is 45. All right. So I just like, math with Katelyn. So I just, I just bought something and then I didn't use it for the first 3 or 4 days, but I'm like already in there. They've got my money, and an email is what pushed me over the edge.
Yeah. And you might not have seen it on social media because maybe, you weren't on at the time they posted or things like that, but you saw it in your inbox.
Yeah, definitely. And and on social media, like stuff goes by like just so fast. And I know like the other thing with like wanting like build an email list, because, if the platform goes down or if something weird changes or it goes away, like you don't own your followers, I know is what a lot of people say. And it's so true. And like the email, you've got those people, like those are your emails that you're allowed to communicate directly to. It goes right to their inbox.
And I think, and maybe you have a different stance on this, let me know if you do, but I've taken like an email that I've written and I've taken a bit from it and used it on social media. So it's not that you have to create, like, I don't want you guys listening in to think like, oh my gosh, now there's just one more thing on my plate. I'm all about like taking things off your plate. It's like, you can actually multi-purpose use things and know that people, not the same people, will all see it. And maybe sometimes some people will see it twice, but they say like people need to see things 7 times before they take action on actually like booking the appointment, buying the product, like calling you, whatever it is. So I don't know. Do you have that same thought, like using an email and an IG post, like using it together?
Yeah, like if it means that you're gonna email, if it's like the difference maker between emailing or not emailing, then I'm like, yes, whatever it takes people to email, even when I'm like, write the tiniest email ever. Yes. So it's like, if you've got to repurpose, totally repurpose. Or like, you know, if you're like, I don't know what to write in this email, but something that in the Instagram post, like you can take a piece of it and then riff off of something slightly different in your email. Like go for that. I do, the reason I'm like saying it the way I'm saying is like, I am like an advocate of having, you know, different material in your email, but not at the cost of not emailing. So if you're repurposing, I don't care if it's exactly the same as the Instagram. In that situation, if it's going to make your life easier and it's just going to make you email, then absolutely do it. And what you said is so true too, Dawn. Like you do have to see things multiple times. You've got to repeat yourself and all that stuff. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, this has been so amazing to have you on the podcast, Katelyn. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your wisdom and your conversion copywriting. I was going to try and think of another C word to make that a really good alliteration, but conversion copywriting. No, it's not coming. It's not working.
Like
creativity,
craft, like
craft. You're amazing. You guys, you need to go follow her. So it's, I am Katelyn Collins on Instagram. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's where they can find you. That's where you go click the link in the bio, get her copywriting starter kit. This is going to help you in your business so much. Even if you're feeling like I can't add an email, go download it, learn it, apply it to what you can apply it to right now, and then start slowly growing. You will get more comfortable. I don't want this podcast to make you feel overwhelmed like you've got to do more. It's just to help you start getting that voice in your head, the voice of who you are, out onto paper or digitally. It's going to help so much. And I know Katelyn's helped me so much. And I'm excited to see where your business keeps going and what you're all doing, and more dance moves on Instagram stories. They're the best, what you do.
Abso-freaking-lutely. They're coming. Don't you worry.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. You're another one of my absolute favorite people out there. So all the nice things you just said to me, like right back at you. I can't wait to see what you do next. I don't know about the dance moves, but no, but I'm waiting for the awkward TikToks. Let's please make that happen.
Guys, wait for us on TikTok. Wait for it. It's going to be epic. Well, I hope you're excited to go write some emails and write some captions. And if you're still feeling a little bit, go ahead and grab Katelyn's Copywriting Starter Kit. It is going to help you out a ton. Learn how to talk naturally and talk naturally. Wow, you get it. Learn how to write the way you talk. Copy talking. I thought that was so amazing. And if you want to learn even more how to infuse email into your business that can actually help increase your booking rates and sell more products and just help you out without taking a ton of time, go ahead and get on the waitlist for my signature program, Rock Your Business, your guide to earning 6 figures stress-free, because that's what I'm all about. It's not about putting more on your plate. It's about taking stuff off, working smarter, not harder. So go ahead and go to dawnbradley.com/RYB and get on the wait list. All right, now if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and like it, subscribe. If you're listening on iTunes, leave a review, or listening on Spotify, or if you're on YouTube, leave a comment, subscribe, share with your friends. Let's help out our anxious creative community. And I'll see you next week.